early 2019, Bradley's friend was given this 1999 Mustang Saleen from some church friends. The car had sat for about 2.5 years, and at the time had seen much better days. It was covered in dirt, pollen, sap, bird poop, you name it, it was probably on the paint. The convertible top was stained with all sorts of stuff. The Saleen windshield banner was cracked and peeling, the tint on the inside was peeling, the tires were dry rotted and nearly bald. It was truthfully in terrible shape. Actually seeing it in person for the first time made Bradley not even want to touch the car at all. But it's actually been one of the most rewarding things he has ever done in his entire life. The history of the car was that it was owned by a 16 or 17-year-old kid, and it was his first car. He unfortunately was not the best driver in the world. He didn't keep up with the maintenance at all. The only thing the kid really did with the car was put gas in the tank and maybe change the oil once in a while. And so the car started to run like garbage, and being abused by a teenager was even worse for it. So eventually the car started having problems. Many of the body panels, including the bumpers, front fenders, and everything had been replaced with regular GT panels because the originals were damaged. The hood was swapped out for a poorly made fiberglass one with fake vents, as he wanted more style, and the Saleen spoiler was swapped out for a much bigger eBay spoiler, and the chrome Saleen wheels were replaced with 2015 Mustang wheels. The original Saleen wheels to this car are still in the previous owner's garage because they were so destroyed, pitted, and curb rashed that Bradley didn't want to have anything to do with them. And all the rest of the specific Saleen stuff was just tossed aside or thrown away from the previous owner. And so that's why it looks like a GT with Saleen stuff on it rather than an actual Saleen. But this truly is a real Saleen car. It's number 99-345. As for the interior, it was pretty messed up too and repainted and things. But the question is, why was this car sitting for a few years? Well, the story was that the car started to run rough, and that over a couple of weeks they decided that it was time to park the car. It was smoking white out the exhaust, which could be signs of a blown head gasket. So the 17-year-old kid who owned this car kicked this car to the curb and got a 2007 V6 Mustang that's all riced out, and he still drives that car today. So that left this car sitting and available for someone to come by and either part it out or rescue it. So it fell into the hands of Bradley's friend in 2019, and in September he was talking with Bradley, and he started to explain to him that he was quickly realizing that he didn't have any time to work on it and that his dad wanted the car gone. So Bradley and his cousin both expressed interest in the car and decided that they wanted to be partners in its rebuild. The friend's dad told them that it was their car if they would get a trailer and haul it off. So that night they rented a U-Haul, loaded it up, and took it across town, where they were able to put it under Bradley's grandpa's carport until it was safe to drive and ready to go. I think this is really cool. This picture of it parked there is like a scene from a movie. If you could watch them tow this car over there on the trailer, get it off, park it under a carport, and then turn out the lights. It just looks like an awesome scene from a cool movie. I'd love to see that movie if it was a movie. The first plan of attack was just to get everything on the engine reassembled and see if it would even fire up. They checked the oil, and for oil that had sat for about 3 years, it was a tad bit burnt, but it didn't look too terrible. It wasn't reflective or milky, which was a good sign. They checked the coolant, and it was a different story. Some oil had clearly gotten into the system, and they knew that it was some kind of a gasket leak, but they weren't quite sure if it was really a head gasket or anything else, and so they decided to focus on that later. So they pulled the spark plugs, they were all clean. They sprayed some WD-40 down in the combustion chamber to help lube the cylinder walls for the first startup. They got the intake system all hooked up with everything that was left on it. They charged the battery overnight, and the next morning it was ready to fire up. There was a terrible vacuum leak, and it failed to start up, and they realized that the PCV hoses that were running from the intake to the IAC valve and the driver's side valve cover were probably important, so they made sure to hook that all up and got it all connected nicely. They primed the fuel pump and they tried it again, and it fired right up. Immediately steam from the condensation and the exhaust had flowed out pretty thick, but it died down in the matter of a few minutes, and it maintained a very nice solid idle. These two valves are very good engines, and they idled very nice as well. So they let it run for a bit and warm up, and then they shut it down. And just look at that. That is so cool to see the supercharger on that car. It's really neat to have a supercharged 4.6 liter. So now it was on to trying to figure out this oil leak issue. Fortunately, there were no other leaks with the car. It was actually a very nice surprise. Even the air conditioning worked on the car. And so they started to research the issue and try to figure out if it really had a bad head gasket. They feared that that really was the case. But there weren't really any other signs of a bad head gasket. The oil looked good. There wasn't really any white smoke anymore. The idle seemed to be pretty good. The only issue they had was that the oil was making its way into the coolant. So first they began flushing the whole system. They ran water through it. They were trying to see how major of a leak there was with dealing with this. They fired the car back up, drove it onto the side of the grandpa's house, drained the water, grabbed the water hose, and went to town, revving the engine up every so often while sucking water in from the hose into the system, but also purging the water that had already been in the system and trying to cycle it through and see if there was oil coming through. Unfortunately, there was oil that kept getting into the coolant. But fortunately for Bradley, he decided to join a Saleen Facebook page, and he was on there and getting advice from people, and they were all telling him, well, you should probably check the oil filter adapter gasket, because sometimes the seal can break and you can get oil into the coolant and vice versa. And I've had those gaskets fail a lot. Usually they leak oil or coolant out of them onto the street. But it is possible that the oil and coolant can mix if that gasket cracks. So they thought it was definitely worth a shot. They drove it up onto ramps, drained the coolant and oil, pulled the housing off, and the gasket was caught red-handed. There it was, a destroyed gasket. Such a minor tear, but just enough to let oil seep into the coolant. So they ran down and grabbed a $25 gasket. They put fresh oil in, new coolant, and 2 hours of labor, and the new gasket was installed, and just like that, the oil leak was gone. So for $88, he now had a Saleen, and it was alive and well in only 4 days of owning it. And so now the car ran fine. And so now, despite the abuse of the car, all the body panels being changed, the way it was treated, the maintenance problems, everything, the abuse from the previous owner, the way he drove it, it wasn't enough to kill this 4.6 liter 2-valve engine. And with Bradley's help from friends and family, they now had a great running car.
Ready? Yeah, keep sitting.
So that's mostly what happened to revive the car, but now it came to maintaining the car and fixing everything that's wrong with it. The car had 142,000 miles on it when they just got it all running and everything, and now it's time to fix some things that needed: a water pump, brakes, new front tires, new wiring, convertible top hydraulic replacements, spark plugs, coils, coil unplugs, etc. The nice thing was he's finally at the point now where he can spend the money on things that he wants to do to the car rather than spending on the money just to get it running. And so you can see it needed the windshield replaced, and he decided to get rid of that ugly hood and go with a 9901 Cobra style or 0304 V6 hood on it and get the windshield replaced. And he ordered KBD's polyurethane Saleen kit, which is nearly identical to the OEM kit, but it's more flexible and forgiving, so that'll help it from cracking and everything. But the car runs great, and he's even gotten around to ordering the new badging and striping and everything for it. And the next thing for the car is paint and body work, so he wants to get the car cleaned up. And so you can see how bad the paint was, and he tried to revive it and get it looking a little bit better, but now he's actually got the car in paint and body. And so you can see the kit here getting all painted and ready to go. And here is a shot of the side skirts. They're getting all painted and nice. And this is another shot of the front bumper. Some more of the front bumper here. And it even has now a Terminator hood that's going to go on the car. It looks really nice. And you can see this beautiful Saleen S281 wing. I really like that spoiler. But you can see that this car is now getting the love that it deserves. And he decided to stay with the Ford Black, which was factory for the car for cost reasons and because it was the original color. And the rest of the Saleen body kit will be installed: the quarter panels, vents, side skirts, everything, the bumpers, and it will all be adjusted until the fit and finish is perfect. After all that, the only thing left is to get the interior redone. He'll probably just swap in some seats with harnesses, something kind of cool for it. And he really doesn't like that brown convertible top. It did not come with the car. It should have a black one on it, and he's going to put a black top back on there. And so now you can see the car is coming together very nicely. And Bradley is 18 years old, so this is a big project for someone that young. I don't know if I would have ever been able to do something that cool at that age, and I never would have had a car like this at that age too, so that's really cool for him. So I want to read his Instagram post about the car, just to put it in his own words about how this has all been. He said, 10 months ago this car was completely dead. Now it's back to being a certified ripper. With the help of some friends and family, this car has gone from being beat up, ugly, and struggling to run to now being nearly unrecognizable. There are still many things to do, ranging from new convertible top to gutting and redoing the interior, changing the wheel and tire setup, and getting a retuned and smaller supercharger pulley. Many people would have looked at this car, seen it as a trash 2-valve with a blower and Brimbos, pulled the good stuff off, and scrapped the rest. Has this been a financial investment? Yes. Will I ever make the money I put back into it? Probably not. What I care about most important is that I can look at this car and talk about this car and know that everything you see here today was done mostly on my own. There have been many long nights working on this car, some that have resulted in wrenches taking flight. There are people that have come and wanted to buy the car because I wanted to give up. But looking at it now, it's been well worth it, and I wouldn't trade the car or the things I've learned for the world. And so I just think this is really cool, and I want to thank Bradley for saving this car, and I'm really proud of him for putting all his effort into this and turning this into something really cool. And this car is sought after, and it's valuable, and people do like it. Sure, it has some high miles on it, but it looks great, and it's an awesome car. So this is a really cool story, and I'm really happy to share it. I'm glad that I was able to talk to Bradley about this car, and that we're Instagram buddies and we can keep up on the future of this car. And if you want to follow his Instagram, it's thatwhitevq. I'll put that right here so you can see it. And I just want to thank everyone for the nice comments you leave on these videos. Thank you for sharing your stories with me. I'm glad that I can make these and that everybody enjoys them. It's really nice to get positive feedback. It's really nice to make friendships. I've made a lot of friends with these stories, and it's just fun to be able to have this as a community for all of us to share our cars together. So remember to subscribe to the channel and like the videos and share them with your friends. and stay tuned for more of these Mustang stories.